bought a car from a lady down the road from that place in the trailer in Fort McMurray, and the car didn't work. It had a blown head gasket, so it would overheat. I never realized this on the test drive. And that was like pretty much the end of it. I then kind of moped around. I learned that there were some places down the road where you could get some free food, and that's kind of what I did every once in a while. There's a cool part about this story. While I was there at the trailer, I seen a lot of crackheads come and go. I had really screwed up by quitting my job out in the oil sands. I couldn't seem to get another one. And I couldn't seem to get a decent job around town, and I was just broke all the time. And I really got to know all these crackheads that came and went, but there was one that never went. His name was John. He was quite a drug addict. He'd been doing crack and shooting cocaine for quite a few years. And at one point, like, he was like helping me find showing me where you can go get some food to keep myself from dying of starvation. And he was being a bit of a mentor to me in a little bit of a bad way, where he was kind of showing me a lot about the drug scene. And it was you just never seen anything like this. Trailer park boys ain't got shit on this trailer park. The crime, the the guns, the shootings, the fucking the murder, the murders that happened right there in that trailer park. Um. Anyhow, drug dealers like at every household along the whole strip. Rydell, Fort McMurray, it no longer exists. They moved all the trailers. Um, I think maybe the street still exists, but yeah, where was I? I'm there at this place, and things are just they're really going downhill fast. I was in Alberta, I had a job, then I'm doing crack in Fort McMurray in a fucking trailer with no job. I'm going nowhere, as a matter of fact. Never been so low. Um, this lady from Nova Scotia came. She found an advertisement in a newspaper or something like that. Maybe it was online for a lady with an apartment for rent in Fort McMurray. She worked at the bank. The bank was giving these sort of advances, raises, bonuses for people that were willing to go and work in Fort McMurray. She took them up on her offer. When she got there, she found that she was living in a crack trailer, and she was so mad because she's a dignified woman with a family and a long history of just being a dignified woman. And she was from Gambia, and she needed somebody to help her. She felt so unsafe, and she found a little bit of safety in me. I would walk her to the grocery store at night so that she didn't feel like she was going to get attacked by anyone. And in exchange, she would cook me some authentic African cuisine to the best of your ability after shopping and getting your supplies from a grocery store in Fort McMurray. However, she said it's about the same as what she would cook at home. And interesting side note, she would eat her rice in her hand. She would pack the rice into little balls in her hand and eat it. And apparently there was this another interesting little side note, this interesting thing about the way she was as a mother, where back in her country, you as a mother have duty to your children first. And so if there was only enough food for the children, there was only enough food for the children. She would always eat last, and that included her husband. And just a very dutiful, amazing woman. And she just sort of was a good guiding light for me. She saw that I was going down a bad road, and she would give me sort of like positive things about myself to hinge on, and realize that I don't need to be doing this. And I led her in a lot of directions to help her get a job in Fort McMurray. I don't know if it eventually was through my help, or if my help even helped her at all, but she eventually got a job as a camp manager and was making a lot more money than the bank was actually offering her, and it came with housing and all these other benefits. She did very well for herself eventually. Um, up in Fort McMurray, that is. So meeting her, she called herself my African mother, and yeah, like I say, she said so many nice things about me that made me feel confident. Exactly what I needed at the time. She really was a God sent angel for me. Um, I think it was the fact that she said that about me that made me feel so special. Like, wow, I'm doing good in the world a little bit. Anyway, um, that was my first sort of stint in Fort McMurray. Uh, I left because my mother said, "Why don't you just come back home and try again back home? I will buy you a plane ticket." And that's how that went. I went back. Um, didn't make anything of myself. You know, got little jobs, working as carpenter, working as. Geez, what did I do when I went back? Yeah, I mainly just worked as a carpenter, and till I got sick of it and went back again within less than a year, going towards a job that I got through my mother. Ironically enough, she had worked for a guy in Alberta. No name necessary. He apparently was a great Christian man, and he had this opportunity for me and my brother to come work there. Times were slow again in the oil patch, and both of us being apprentice scaffolders, we did not have the sort of, the qualifications that people were looking for. And it's hard to get a job when you're an apprentice, uh, especially when times are slow. So we went to go build Quonset huts, and when we got there, we just did our thing. We're from New Brunswick. We like to get the job done so that we can get home and drink. I think it is the thing that makes us hard workers from New Brunswick. But when we got there, we got the job done in, I think it was 4.5 days or something like that. And everybody was kind of standing around right as we're doing the final cleanup and kind of whispering and acting a little funny. And I can remember speaking up to the foreman saying, "What's going on? Why is everybody acting funny?" He's like, "Well, this building would normally take us to over 2 weeks to put up. Because you and your brother got here, we have never completed a building in such a short fashion. And uh, the boss has saved so much money because they didn't have those extra weeks of hotels and expenses. That the job's done. Now we're paid. Now we can move to the next job." Um, that's why everybody's acting funny. The boss, he wanted to repay the favor. He gave us raises like we'd never seen before. We were making the kind of money we'd never dreamed of, or at least me. I don't know about my brother, but um, problem was is that I still was a damaged addict, and the money went all up my nose. The foreman that I had at that job had a coke problem, and I started to dabble with him until the point where I started to spend every dime I was making at that job on cocaine with him. Him and maybe a few other coworkers that later came along who also did some cocaine, but mainly with him until the drugs and the alcohol sort of eventually caused enough problems with him in that job that I was fired by him because I got kicked off of one of his job sites for being there drunk. It was a contract with an oil sand, sort of a big construction company. They had serious rules about drugs and alcohol, and that was that. And actually have another experience right out of high school pretty well. Like, I mean, I had about a year out of high school of working jobs and being a drug addict and making a fool of myself. And then my other buddy from high school just graduated, and he said, "Why don't you come out to Alberta with me? We will we will work on the oil rigs. We will save our money. We will build duplexes, and we will rent them out. And we will retire by the age 40." I said, "Okay, that sounds like a decent plan. I got no plan. I'm in." Went to Alberta. Couldn't get the job as an oil rigger. You needed a truck. You needed a trucker. You really needed to know somebody in high places, and I didn't have either of those. I had the tickets and experience as a hard worker, and I had a lot of promises to get a truck. But they said, "No, sorry. You need to have a truck. You need to be able to prove that you can get out to these oil rig sites." And like there was even a spot on all these application forms for your truck license plate number, your insurance, your registration. They wanted to see not only that you own a truck, they wanted to see that it was going to be a working truck, that it was a new truck, that it was a good truck. So anyway, that just completely failed that trip. I got nothing. I went to like 30, I think it must have been 20 or 30 different places in Calgary, dropped off my resume, talked to all these HR departments, sat and went and like filled out their applications, sat in their offices with them, told them my story. "This is what I'm here to do." They said, "You're too small. You're never going to work there. Plus, you don't have a truck." So I ended up going to Banff on a trip. Well, no, I got a job at Safeway. I couldn't handle it. I worked for 4 hours at Safeway. I think that was all I could handle. Anyway, that's a funny story. Um, Went to Banff, got a job working around Banff at Rocky Mountain Resort. Couldn't make enough money to even support myself. Got another job at Rocky Mountain Resort. Turned out to be just a place where people go to party. And that didn't work. Didn't make any money. Only a week there. Couldn't handle it. Too many drunken, crazy people. Same thing. Story ends there with my mom saying, "Well, why don't you come back home?" And came back home. Worked in warehouses. Became a marijuana dealer for a short stretch. Uh, that was actually pretty fun time. Everybody likes you when you have marijuana. uh, it was actually like fucking hilarious because, I was able to sit on my ass and my dealer would come to my house. He would drop off a big pile of marijuana. And my customers would come to my house. They would buy little chunks of marijuana. I was able to pay my rent. I was able to pay for my food, my insurance, my gas on my vehicle. I lived more comfortably. Every day I would pay my buddy with weed or something else to go to the store to get some liquor for us to start out the day. And I was killing myself, man. Like, I started to have these weird kind of seizures where I'd stand up and my knees would go weak and I'd like need to sit back down right away. And I'm only like 22, 21 years old or something like that. And, yeah, so that's when my brother said, "Come on out to Alberta." That's when I fucked that up by quitting that job for a girlfriend and ended up being a fucking homeless person for the first time, pretty much. Like, living in a trailer park, eating at homeless shelters anyway. And my mommy saved me. She took me back home. Again, worked crappy jobs at warehouses. The only things there are for uneducated people in New Brunswick. I tried again in 2007 there. 2006 the first time. 2007 the second time. That's where I ended up getting seriously addicted to coke. 2007. So after being addicted to coke and fucking up that job with that guy, my brother and I were living with my cousins, and we were all having a falling out because we're all working at the same place, and some of us were getting fired, and some of us weren't, and some of us felt like we were being used by the others, and um, I didn't want to be there anymore. My brother eventually realized he didn't want to be there anymore, and so my brother kind of took me away. We lived in his van, and he got us a job in the Carpenters Union in Alberta, and that's where I was indoctrinated into the union inducted as a second year scaffolder. Um, got to be a scaffolder, got to make good money, but always the same thing. Could never get enough money in my pocket to do anything with. There's always a burning desire to do drugs and alcohol and do stupid things. And yeah, I mean that's how my life sort of went, just back and forth. Go to New Brunswick, uh, when you fail, then you come back to Alberta, try again, get addicted to some drugs. Prior to addicted to cocaine or crack, right out of high school, I got addicted to PCP. I was kind of still in high school when I met some guys that said that PCP is actually what mescaline is, and that you can get it for really cheap and sell it for a whole bunch. And um, we picked up a little bit of it, me and my buddy. We cut it up and we started doing it, saying that we were going to sell it. Shame on me. We started doing it. We never hardly sold any of it. We just got so addicted to our own supply. We basically started fucking up. We started stopped paying our rent. We started losing our jobs. Like, we were on a borderline employment level with our moving furniture jobs after our dabblings with drugs and never showing up. Yeah, like, here I am pausing and saying and what I don't want is to write all of this down and be reading from a script. I want you to get the impression that I'm telling the truth, and I think that's going to come from me relating it just naturally. And I think if any of this works, and if any of you guys believe my story, I'll end up being questioned severely about all this later, and it will be a matter of whether my stories now align with the way I tell them later. And I think that's important. I can't wait to be questioned if I get to that point. Yeah, so what was it? I'm back. I'm back in Alberta. I'm working as a scaffolder. I get addicted to well, I started doing cocaine again once I get in the scaffolders union, and it went into where I started to do it with my foreman a little bit, and I started to do it with one of my coworkers a little bit. And there was a thing going on at the time in 2008 where it was a boom, and there was some like just crazy $200,000 a year jobs even for a second year scaffolder up in Fort McMurray. And here I was making $1,000 a week, which was pretty good for me at the time. I wanted more, and I had no understanding of how more would just probably make my addictions worse instead of solve my problems. That's where I went, was Fort McMurray, except for I went up there while I had some money in my pocket after just getting a loan from the bank and blowing a whole bunch of it on cocaine. There was hardly any of it left, but I still had enough to make sure that when I got to Fort McMurray, I made a whole bunch of friends with crackheads. Never got a job. Ended up being a homeless crackhead before I lost my truck that I brought up with there. I drove drug dealers around Fort McMurray making their deliveries and pickups in exchange for crack, until I eventually got caught doing it when my truck got impounded. The only way I was able to get the stuff out of my truck that was basically all my belongings to my name in the world at the time, was to sell my truck to a guy that I met in Fort McMurray for the price of the impound fees, just so that he would go get it and I could at least get my stuff out. And it's kind of cool because he was starting a business as a tree faller person. That's why he needed the truck. His accountant was providing the funding for this, and I got to work as a tree faller helper. Unfortunately, he too was a crackhead, and he would offer to pay me in crack or money at the end of the day. And most of the time, I would choose the crack. And that's how that job went. Didn't last very long. He would make his money, and he could make. I watched him make like $3,500 in 6 hours with the chainsaw. But that would just mean he would take 3 days off and go smoke crack and right back to zero if he was able to keep his chainsaw. When you get doing crack, you don't stop. Or I don't stop. I start selling my belongings when I run out of money. It's a really terrible slavery, that crack addiction. So, yeah, I was a crackhead. And, it's like crack. It's just so you get delusional on it. You get addicted really fast. You start to think these crazy fantasies, and you start to think, oh, if you could just be the dealer of the crack, then you can support this extravagant need for $2,000 or $3,000 a day to support a crack addiction. You get all these friends around you, and that's all they do. That's what you know. Yeah, the crack basically swallowed me up when I went up to Fort McMurray. I went to a recovery cleanup spot for a week. While I was there, I was sober. There's a bunch of positive people there that worked there, that is, and they fed us well. They gave us a place to stay and a lot of positive motivation on quitting drugs. And while I was there, I was able to find a job up in Fort McMurray as a scaffolder. I spent about a week at that job, I think, before someone approached me asking me if I like to party. That's secret language for do you do crack? I said yes. I didn't keep that job very long. I would get my paychecks and go blow them in my camp room smoking crack. My brother shows up in Fort McMurray just randomly. There I am in my camp room smoking crack, missing work, about to get fired, thinking I might already be fired. I think actually I was, like just at that moment when he got here, getting fired. But anyway, there I was smoking crack. He's there. I'm so embarrassed. He says, like, come on, bro. Let's get out of here. Just come with me. We'll see what we can do to fix this. My brother kind of saved me. He went and spent his money. I think I had a paycheck coming in. I sent it to him. We put it together. We got an apartment in Edmonton. I went there and cleaned up for a while. Got a job as a scaffolder for a while. Things were going good for a while. And then I crushed my finger. Or no. Things were going good for a while, and then I got a job at this fucking place in Peace River, and the company that was doing the job is run by a bunch of people who are very comfortable with people using drugs, and that seemed to be the common thing that was done over there at that job. Was you do the drugs and you get the work done because you can stay up for hours. It set me off. I started doing the drugs again, and had to get cleaned up again. I got another job, and that went well until I crushed my finger in a manway cover, and I had to go get surgery, and I lost my job because I refused to take a drug test. I got a lifelong site-wide ban at Albie and Sands for refusing the drug test. I stayed there. You know, it's funny. I was doing so well at that point in my life. I had $6,000 in the bank for the first time in my life, and I had managed to do that within only a short period. Times again were good for a second year scaffolder up in Alberta. And then I crushed my finger in a manway cover, and I just got depressed and started drinking. And I made $6,000 last quite a long time with just drinking it away. Just sat in that apartment, just went back to the liquor store every day. I think I got a sub every 2 days for sustenance, but the rest of the stuff I consumed was just beer. It was kind of an interesting part of my life because I was listening to the CBC radio every day while drinking. I'd wake up early in the morning and I'd get drunk, listen to the CBC radio, sleep by noon, woke by 2 or 3 again, getting drunk again, listening to the CBC radio. Um, Waiting to get cleared for work, waiting for my finger to get better. Um, Eventually, I went outside one day with the idea in my mind that I was going to get some crack. And there it was, right away, as soon as I went outside, some guy on a bike. He had it right in his hand at the time. And we went up into my apartment. I told him I got a bunch of money. Just go get me some more. Give me the shit you got. He said, I'll be right back. And that's when I really got hardcore addicted to crack. Because having an apartment in one of the sort of central crack areas of Edmonton, and that allowed me to be somebody that had something to offer to all of the homeless crackheads and prostitutes in the area. And this guy happened to know them all and brought them all to my place. And I thought I had a bunch of friends. And what it was just a constant game of crack being smoked and me trying to get a little bit of it because they were there at my place and they should at least, you know, help me out with my addiction since they're there right in front of me doing their drugs. They should at least share with me since they're there. Most of the time, they would just use you. They would just tell you to go fuck yourself. They'd come and use your phone, smoke their crack, and then they'd leave and slam the door. And then they'd come back and say, oh, well, this time it'll be different. And, you know, I had long hair back then at that time. And I was really feeling it one day that this life is just miserable and I needed to do something different. I looked around and there was 3 people in my apartment and they were all doing their thing, cleaning their crack pipes, hoping to get a little bit more high off what was left in there. Doing their thing where they were contemplating the next person they're gonna rip off, or you know what drug addicts do, completely a slave to their addiction. Nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing. And I realized I didn't matter to them. So I started to, right in front of them, sitting in my living room of my apartment. I pulled out a pair of scissors and I just started cutting my hair. Big long hair. I had like hair halfway down my back. And I just started cutting it off and throwing it on the floor in front of me. And it was like I was almost completely done cutting all my hair off before anybody in the room even realized what I was doing. They were also self-obsessed with their addiction and the associated chores involved, you could call them. So that was when I realized I need to make a change in my life. It was like me trying to say, I'm going to be a different person. You know, when I look in the mirror, I told myself, I'm going to see a different person, and that's going to help me see myself as a different person. And it was hard because I liked my hair. Sort of like was part of what I thought maybe who I am. I'm one of them fucking long-haired hippies. That makes me cool or something like that. And yeah, uh, ended up losing that apartment for lack of rent payment. That's basically what happened there. My brother had a new apartment with a girlfriend by the time I sort of like was really, really in need of help. I had a few places I could go and crash after that place. Um, that what I did at that place totally it ruined my brother's respect for me completely. I trashed the place. I sold his belongings for drugs. Uh, I showed no respect the fact that I shared an apartment with my brother and that he helped me get there. I wouldn't have been even there if not for him. Uh, so that was terrible. But he found himself a girlfriend. The places that I found in between that place and him and his girlfriend, they weren't working out. It was just pathetic slum spots, like I'll labor for you in exchange for a place to stay, and then it doesn't work out. Lots of long stories about that. But so I moved in with my brother for a little bit. Like he let me stay on the floor in his living room. He didn't have an extra bedroom to share for me. I was still just a hardcore drunk, and there's a story. I didn't know how to stop when I would get too drunk. I would just get drunk to the point where I'd black out consistently, and I would often wake up in pools of my own urine. I just passed out and pissed myself, like lost count of how many times it happened. It was so embarrassing the first time, and I mean, it's still embarrassing, but it almost just became something that, like, I just dealt with. I didn't fucking even consider it anymore. It was like, I'm a fucking drunk and I'm a loser. Sure, I don't fucking care. Yeah, I piss myself. But as long as I don't talk about it, then nobody will really know as long as I clean up after myself. But no, you know, it was disgusting. I was a disgusting, fucking, pathetic fucking drunk. And so I'd be on the floor at my brother's apartment in his living room, and I would piss myself, and it would like, get on the floor, get on other people's stuff, get on, you know. My brother was nice enough to never really confront me to my face about it, but I'm sure him and his girlfriend bitched about it. Like, there was times when I pissed myself in the middle of the floor at a buddy's place, and he was living with his sister, and his sister was so fucking mad at him because she had to go steam clean the fucking carpet. And it's like, it was a problem. It was one of the things that made me knew I should be quitting drinking a long time before I actually did. You know, uh, but there it was. When you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. You don't fucking care about life, obviously. Um, yeah, so working for these kind of cash job assholes that wanted to pay less than minimum wage because they were paying in cash, and they knew because you didn't have a driver's license or a vehicle. They knew that because you're an alcoholic or a drug addict that you'll accept daily cash payments at the end of the day because you really want to get your fix. And I was able to kind of like roll along as an alcoholic for a few months at my brother's house, but eventually my dad said, "Why don't you come back home to New Brunswick yet again and work at my shop?" And that's what I did. I worked in my dad's machine shop with him in 2000. Like, my memory says it was 2010, but my buddy who was there when I came home insists that it was 2011. So, I mean, I was a drug addict. I was a fucking drunk. I don't know where that year went, but there it is. Uh, 2011, I'm working in my dad's shop. I get there at the beginning of the year. I stay just about until fall. Actually, no, it was into fall before I left. I left because the the life I was living at my dad's was really no better. We came back to New Brunswick. And my mom and dad were living together, and they haven't lived together consistently for the last decade. It's been an off and on thing. So it's a delicate situation. And when my mother saw me and my dad getting along and drinking together, she blew up and left him. She went and bought another house. Not the first time she's done this. Come to him and say, I bought a house. I'm leaving you. See you later. And so there it is. My mom left my dad because of me. So I stayed with my dad and worked at his shop, and we got drunk every fucking day. And it's not what I came to New Brunswick for. I thought I was coming home to get cleaned up. I wasn't really open about those intentions with my dad. I didn't really want him to be burdened. I've always sort of felt like that, where I don't like to burden other people with my problems, so I kind of keep my stuff to myself. Anyway, so there it is. I'm not really telling my dad my intentions, so when he's drinking, it's just so easy for me to go, okay, I'm gonna have a drink with my dad. It's a good time. You know. Anyway, my dad was a depressed person because my mom left him again, and uh, couldn't seem to talk him out of how it was actually for the best. That she'd always been the problem, and he'll be better off without someone like that in his life. And he just wanted to mope, and he wanted to be sad, and it was like, wow, Dad, you're supposed to be my dad. You're supposed to be my encouragement, my safe zone. But you're on your knees right in front of me day after day, and nothing I can say will change your attitude. You never want to do anything. You just want to drink and watch TV. And I was like, you know what? I'm going back to Alberta. I'm trying again. So again, I left for Alberta way. This time it was actually Saskatchewan, Canada. I left there with the intention to make something myself, but with really no real steps towards recovery of my addictive nature. I still was going to go there and probably make money and probably just blow it all like I always did. Yeah, I still smoke cigarettes and marijuana, like a lot of it. Anyway, you might be able to tell. Um, yeah, I went to Saskatchewan. There's gonna be this big booming, high paying job in Saskatchewan. Got there. There was an explosion at the plant. Then uh, there was a hiring freeze. It was a big paying job. Everybody was welcome from all over Canada. Just get there and do some scaffolding, and we're gonna pay you something like $100,000 a year. Pretty good paying job. And as soon as I landed, there was an explosion at the plant. Now there was a 2 month long investigation, and all hiring was put on for freeze until the investigation was over. And so the job I came for, I couldn't get. I sat there at my brother's place in Regina, Saskatchewan, and worked at these like placement agency jobs, warehouses, and there's some funny stories to go along with that about how, again, like his neighbor was a crackhead, and I joined right in with every dollar I fucking made at those goddamn warehouses, uh, smoking crack and drinking with her. I come with these motives all through my life, not all through my life, for those first, that first 15 years of my life. Just I got these ideas, and it's like I could never stop my self-destructive nature from taking over and stopping me from going anywhere in a positive direction for just a long time in my life. And so, oh, where was I again? Eventually, the hiring freeze was dropped, and I finally got the call to say you have the job, and all I got to do was go to the drug test. And I had been a pretty good soldier with the marijuana, the thing that shows up on the drug tests, and I was pretty sure I was going to pass. I got really drunk the night before the test in celebration for the fact that I finally got the job that I came there for, and I failed the drug test from having too much alcohol in my system the next day. It's the first time I think I failed a drug test for alcohol. And oh my god, that hit me hard. I thought, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, I came all the way here to get this job and I just fucked it over. And not only did I fuck over that job, but I put myself in a state with the union where now I've got to go see a counselor before they're going to reactivate my work number or whatever you want to, however that works. I I needed to go get an assessment on where I stand on the level of addiction. And I failed. And I didn't think that I needed to fail. I thought, no, this is just recreational for me. So I got to do it again. I failed again. They said, you got to go to treatment or you can't work for the union anymore. I said, okay, I just won't work for the union anymore. I I ran to Edmonton where I knew that I could find jobs, where I knew that I could have contacts, where I knew that even if I don't have any money or any place to stay, there's always those godforsaken homeless shelters, and I'll be able to, like, I knew that going back to my brother's was not going to work. I knew that going back around my father was not going to work. My only option was to do it alone, to do it right, to sober up this time. And I went to Edmonton, and I did it. I stayed sober for 6 months for the first time in my life. Oh no, that's not true. I stayed sober on liquor for 6 months, but I still did a little bit of dabbling in drugs here and there throughout that 6 months, so I wasn't really sober. Um, yeah, I stayed sober. I ended up getting a job after however many months at this place that hired non-union member scaffolders, and it was a place that apparently the word was that they'll hire anybody. The word was that if you have a criminal record, that will work to your benefit on your resume. And if you have a drug addiction, that will work to your benefit on your resume. The guy that I was working for was paying everybody cash. A whole bunch of people ended up getting caught and having to pay a bunch of back taxes for it. But this was a sort of important job for a reason that I went there, and I'm pretty sober. I got an attitude of sobriety anyway. Um, I hadn't had a job as a scaffolder in over a year, I think it was. Probably even more than that, actually. And so I'm there, and I'm just a second year scaffolder. I've always been just an apprentice scaffolder. I never thought I would be any more than an apprentice scaffolder. Just the idea that to be responsible for all the things that journeyman had to be responsible for, that was way beyond me. No way. This is just too easy that I just do what he tells me to. And that's my job, and I make pretty good money. I was happy with that. But this place was very irritating because it had no journeyman scaffolders. It had no guys who knew what the hell they were doing. And I really felt like I knew a whole bunch more than the people that were there telling me what to do. And there was this rumor going around that you get paid for what you can do at this job. So therefore, I'm a second year scaffolder because that's what I said I can do. But if I say that I can do a journeyman's job, and I can prove that I can do a journeyman's job, that's exactly what I will get paid. And this went to my head. I stewed about it for a little while, and I thought, you know what, like, I can do this so much better than these guys. Why don't I just go? And that's what I did. I went to the foreman and I said, look, I heard you guys will give me a journeyman position if I can prove I can do it, so give me a chance to prove it. Really? You think you can do it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can do it. And then he shows me my first scaffold, and it was a big tower up to this spot. And I said, well, why don't I just hang my scaffold down from that spot? And a hanging scaffold is one of the more experienced versions of a scaffold. And for me to offer to do it as my very first scaffold surprised the foreman, and he said, "Are you sure you can do that?" And I said, "No, I'm pretty sure I can do that." My very first scaffold was a hanging scaffold. The irony about that was that when I went into the office about a month later saying, "How come my paycheck does not represent my position?" He said, "Well, you have to build a hanging scaffold." I said, "What do you mean? My very first scaffold was a hanging scaffold." He said, "Well, no, you have to build a hanging scaffold in a situation that the whole company gets to assess how you've done it. And you're timed, and everyone gets to watch and define whether or not you're actually journeyman qualified if you built the hanging scaffold." I said, "Well, that's ridiculous. We're such a busy company, there will never be any time for that sort of an event to occur. So I'm sitting here working, doing your journeyman's job, and I think doing an amazing friggin' job at it. Like, I was feeling good." And he said, "No, no, we can't give you the raise." So I pretty much quit on the spot. I was having trouble with one of his drug addict foremans. He was really high on what I think to be methamphetamine all the time, and I just could not talk to him. Couldn't sync with his universe. And he wanted me to do things right after the foreman would. This is a stupid story. I'm not going to go any further with that. At that job, I learned how to be a journeyman. I learned that really, really liked responsibility. That when people needed me to be the guy in charge, I could actually do it, and it made me feel just wow. I am actually a capable guy. I'm not just that guy who can take orders. I'm that guy who can get shit done, make shit happen. So at that job, I learned that the position of journeyman was not beyond me. I got into it, and when in it, I did it, and I thought I did it very well. And that gave me a level of confidence that I started going around to the next jobs I was at. And I would say, "Well, I've got experience as a journeyman." And in the scaffolding industry, it's not a registered trade. There's the union and the non-union, and there's everything in between, but it's not yet a registered trade. So there's the union schooling and the non-union schooling and everything in between, but nothing is actually government represented officially. You can't go get a red seal journeyman scaffolding ticket as of yet in the world. And so if you could prove that you have a certain amount of hours in the industry, a lot of companies will accept your hours as proof that you're capable of doing the job. And I had just about enough hours by then as an apprentice scaffolder to be able to go around doing that, just showing everybody that I've been around long enough. I think I know what I'm doing. That they'd give you the chance and the pay rate of a journeyman scaffolder. So I went right from second year scaffolder to journeyman scaffolder, and I never had to work a position as an apprentice scaffolder after that in my life. It's another one of them things that sort of gives you the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you think you're doing good in the world, you get the idea that you can do good at anything, right? And I mean, really, the truth is like I was a hard worker and pretty good with mechanical stuff, but like had no real like saleable skills. If scaffolding is this thing that is in my mind, it's so damn simple. You can pretty much write all of the rules of the code of scaffolding on one piece of paper. um just site to site to site, whatever. um I still didn't really feel like I was a very, and I still couldn't manage my money, you know, right away, even at that job, that one that first became a journeyman scaffolder. I failed to include the fact that, yeah, before the end of that job, I was full blown crack addict again. Oh, man. Happy times. And, where did I go from there? That was 2011. That's when I met my ex-wife, the woman who sort of changed my life. First I met her at this homeless shelter kind of place. It's this place they call the Edmonton Co-op, but it's the Boyle Boyle McCully Community Center. It used to be right behind the casino on 97th Street, I believe, in Edmonton, where the new sort of arena is now. Uh, there was a place. You go there, and they'd keep it open until like 9 or 10 o'clock every day, and people would just go sit there, and they'd serve coffee, and it was a place for people to sit down. I went there looking for some girl that I had just met. We were gonna, I don't know, be friends, and I couldn't find the girl, so I thought, oh well, there's a girl. I wonder if she knows the girl I'm looking for, and I went over. I said, hey, do you know this girl that I'm looking for? And she said, who the hell are you? Why would I tell you anything? How do I know that you're not just another one of the creepy, greasy motherfucking drug addicts? You know, she told me off so bad. And I walked away like, just, huh, what just happened to me? And then it struck me that everything she said was 100% accurate. That why would you give a stranger information as to the whereabouts of a vulnerable, potentially drug addict or mentally unstable person, another female? Why would she give the whereabouts or any information about her to a stranger? It made perfect sense. It was actually maybe one of the most responsible things I've ever heard from anyone at a homeless shelter. So I had, for a long time in my life, had this sort of dialogue with God going on, where I was kind of mad at God a lot of time. Where I'd say, "Hey God, fuck you. Hey God, what's this all about? Why would you do this, you fucking guy? You're supposed to be the loving God. Why would you even have this here, you fucking guy?" And we have our back and forth, and sometimes I don't know, I guess I would make up what I thought God would say in my mind. I'd think, well, here I just said something cocky to God. Now, what would God respond? But he'd say, well, look at you. And then that would cause me to looking at myself, and I'd go, oh, yeah, well, you got some shit. And then I'd usually just use the shit God would say to me. It's like, well, you fucking made me, right? So I'd always have an easy pass out. It's like, you did this to me, bro. So there was God showing up right after I meet this woman, and I'm walking away thinking, what the hell did just happen? This girl's a bitch. And God basically said, like, what do you mean she's a bitch? She basically just did what you do to people. She just sort of played with your head exactly the way you might play with someone's head when you think what they're trying to do is funny to you. And it made me think, like, so, okay. And he said, so what are you walking away for? Are you a fucking pussy? And I said, okay. And he said, turn around and go fucking introduce yourself to that woman. And I said, okay. And I went and introduced myself to her, and she said, look, I don't know who you are, but I can tell that you kind of like me. And I'm going to tell you right now, boy, I'm too old for you. I'm not interested. So just go away. I was like, you're too old for me. You look like you're my age. What the hell are you talking about? And I just kept pushing her and pushing her. She didn't give me an inch. She said, you're an idiot. You're not what I'm looking for. You're too fucking... She said she was 40, but I didn't believe her. I was 27. I even got her to look at my ID, but I was so baffled. No, I didn't get her to look at my ID. I got her to show me her ID. She showed me her ID, and I was so baffled by what was happening. I don't even think I looked at the date, because it turns out that she was actually only 39 at the time. If I'm correct, in hindsight of what occurred and what was actually... either way, she was saying she was 40 and she was too old for me, but I was set on how the way this girl responded to me was unlike anything I've ever seen from a female in my life. And that was worth finding out more. And, I think I just sat down and tried to get to know her. And she had a not very good story about leaving an abusive relationship and um, just a sort of a life of really bad luck, according to her. Health problems and losses of jobs and employment, families and churches not sticking up for her when they should have been there by her side, and now here she is with her child taken away from her, and her husband using her church and his connections within his community to steal the custody of the child based on lies, using the court system with lies, just cheated her out of her kid. And I thought she was amazing, and when like I just fell head over heels for her. It was like freaking love at first sight to the highest degree that I've ever experienced, you know. I've seen women and go, "Wow, that girl is so beautiful," but I never had this need, this drive to want to know more and pursue a woman like anyone else before her. And you know, when I saw her, it was it was like early to mid November, and like I say, I can't really remember the year. I think it was 2010. My buddy swears it was 2011. Either way, there it is. It's late in the year in Alberta, and it's cold outside, and she's all dressed up in a snowsuit and a toque, and she's wearing these little Harry Potter glasses, and she just looks like a little kid about to get on the bus for her first day at school. Like, she had a shaved head, so she had no hair coming down. She was wearing no makeup. She has no wrinkles on her face at the age of 40 and extremely fair skin. Uh, I just thought she was a young girl about my age, and didn't really wasn't for like I say. I went up to her because I thought she might knew. I thought she might know where the girl that I was looking for might be, for no other reason. It was the way she responded to my set of questioning that I thought, you know what, that was actually the correct way to respond. That's that is an enlightened person, you know. That made me be first interested in her, and then like the more I got to know her, I just fell head over heels for her, you know. And there I was, a few months off the liquor, and staying at a homeless shelter. She was staying at the YMCA. I had no real prospects, but I had a lot of dreams, and this sort of like drive that I was like doing pretty good because I was off the liquor for a little while. Um, that story went sour pretty quick when I kept on trying to find out where she was gonna be whenever I could, and trying to like earn her, you know, sway, her attention. I tried to get her to like me, and it never worked. And one day I was eating lunch with her at one of these homeless shelters, and she saw my buddy, and her face just lit right up. And she said, "Hey, John," and she knew him, and like he came and sat down, and the way she looked at him, I could tell. That's the way a girl looks at a guy when she likes him. And she was not looking at me like that. And it was like, I just sat back and I thought to myself, you know, like, I like this girl. I really, really like her for what I think are all the right reasons. And I feel so bad for her. I feel so bad for her story about her life and how she is where she is. I want her to be happy above all else. Who am I to say that she should be with me if it turns out she looks like she'd be far happier with this guy? I mean, let's look at her. She's all bubbly around him. And so later, like almost as soon as he went away, I said, you know, I have his phone number. Do you want it? She said, yeah. And that was that. I gave her my buddy's phone number, and she started going out with my buddy. And the story that I'd heard at that time in my life, that, you know, if you love her, you'll set her free. that was the story that I was listening to in my mind. If I truly love her, then I'm not gonna stand in her way. And that's exactly what she did. She flew away, but when he didn't turn out to be the boyfriend that she wanted, she didn't want anything to do with me, even as a friend, when it was over. Because even though I was interested in her at the beginning, uh, so she should have seen that I should be kind of a little bit happy about the fact that they're not dating anymore. Not actually wanting to help him get back with her. Like, I don't know. He thought that I was working on his behalf, my buddy's behalf, to try to get information about her and her whereabouts and who she's dating to try. That's what she thought. She thought that I was trying to get information about her to give to my buddy. And I was like, no, actually, the truth is I'm glad that you broke up with him because I really like you. And I was hoping maybe I would get a chance to date you. But either way, she wanted nothing to do with me. Never saw her again for like a year. Not quite a year, about 8 months, something like that. Ran into her. I had since become back on liquor hard again. I had since become back on drugs pretty hard again. And there she was. The liquor, the drugs had fucked up my life again. I was just about to go back to being a homeless person again. I just lost my job. I just had a huge fight with my brother. Zero prospects, very little money in my pocket, and I'm walking around thinking, maybe I gotta quit drinking again. And there, who do I see? Is my ex-wife. And she says, not my ex-wife. Well, yeah, at the time was not my ex-wife. She was just a girl that I wanted to date that I really thought was cool. So there she was. And the first thing she said to me was, hey, you want to go get a drink? And I was like, oh, I'm thinking I gotta quit drinking again. She's like, oh no, why? And I told her my story. And she had all these health issues that drinking really helped her with. And despite how I wanted to quit, I went and bought her some alcohol to help her with her pain. And so she looked at me and said, why would you do this? And I said, well, because I like you. And I didn't play it off like I like you, like a boyfriend or something like that. I played it off like I think you're a good person and I want to help. There was some of that there, but I'm sure it was mostly I like her. Either way, that's how the relationship with my ex-wife began. She decided that she was gonna start looking into me on that day. She came to my place where I was still staying. She got one of my buddies to take her there, sort of invited, but not necessarily announced because she didn't say exactly when she was going to be coming. Ironically enough, she came there. I was passed out in a couch in the garage of the house I was renting. Passed out all covered in my own urine. And she shows up with my buddy and plops herself right down on the couch that I'm sleeping on that's all covered in piss. And I'm sure she had to have noticed. I'm sure her butt must have got wet, but she didn't say anything. She knew what she was seeing. She's seeing a guy who was like just giving up on life. And ironically enough, that was when she decided to give me a chance. She started to invite me to do more things with her. Then she just came over. We did the things there, those kissing things. And we woke up in the morning and I said, does this mean you're my girlfriend? And she said, yeah, if you wanted to. And I said, you're damn right I do. And I floated on a cloud for like weeks. I am dating the woman of my dreams. It was like, she didn't expect anything of me. Other than I keep good bodily health care. Like, she obviously didn't expect anything of me. She didn't like drugs, so that was good for me, but she did like alcohol. So we would just drink. If I could make enough money for us to be drunk, we would be just drunk. Sometimes we stayed at homeless shelters. Sometimes we stayed at hotels, depending on how much money I could make as a newfound journeyman scaffolder. For however long I could keep my job, we were never really able to get our shit together long enough to get an apartment for any period of time. And we just broke up back and forth, like, not back and forth. She always broke up with me. She would say, I've had enough of you. And she'd break up with me, and then she would come back, and we would get drunk, and then we would fight, and then we would break up. Again, I was a journeyman scaffolder, so it made it really easy for me to get a job during this period of my life. I could just burn bridges one after another. I don't really feel like I burnt the bridges all the time. I felt like I was in the right and that people were cliquey in these oil sands jobs, and I was getting fired unjustly half the time. But this is a matter of opinion. Either way, never could sober up long enough to do anything, 2014, even though I had offered or asked to maybe her and I together, we could quit drinking and try to make a better life for ourselves, she always said, no, drinking helps me with my pain. Drinking is your problem if you decide it's your problem. And if you want to deal with your problem, you deal with it yourself. And she said that a man should lead. And she said that, like, if you're going to quit drinking, then yeah, you lead the way. Quit drinking. Show me the benefits. And maybe if I can see that, I will follow. A man should always be the leader. That was one of the things she'd say. And she would always just say, no, I like drinking. I like drinking, and I'm not quitting drinking. So if you want to quit, good luck with that. But fuck off. Don't try to put that shit on me. And one day, she just came to me and she said, I'm going to treatment. And I thought that meant she's going away for 3 to 6 weeks. And she's going to come back, and we're going to try something sober, and that would be freaking awesome. But she said, no, I'm going to a special kind of treatment that involves 1 year completely away. I'll see you in a year. I'm leaving in a few weeks. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, how the hell am I going to go a year without seeing you? How the hell am I going to go a year without drinking? But knowing that she had high expectations of what her man should be, and that was that he should be the leader. He should be the one that's setting setting the bar in the relationship, you could say. I said, well, if you have only 2 weeks before you go, that gives me less than 2 weeks to quit. So I think she was going to start on August 5th, 2014 in this 1 year long treatment program. And I quit on August 1st, 2014. My intention was to just quit long enough, basically, until I could say I've got this mastered, and then probably not do anything else after that. I'll probably just start drinking again, hopefully do it with a little bit more control next time. I did the whole year. Doing it for her made it fucking easy. Knowing that she deserved a sober man, I was always able to use that as a justification for saying no to the liquor store whenever it would tempt me. So I kind of cheated. I had this amazing woman in my life that made it easy. And just gonna end my story for now. I'm gonna put pause on it.